The Time Machine, H.G. Wells. The Time Machine is a famous science fiction novel written by H.G. Wells and published in 1895. It is one of the earliest major stories about a machine that allows a person to travel through time. Number 1. Who is the main character? The main character is called the Time Traveler. He is a scientist and inventor who believes that time is another dimension, just like length, width, and height. He creates a machine that can move through this fourth dimension. Number 2. What is the Time Machine? The Time Machine is a fictional machine that allows its user to travel forward or backward through time. The Time Traveler demonstrates it to a group of friends. He then uses the machine himself and travels far into the future. Importantly, the story isn't simply about an exciting machine. Wells uses time travel to ask questions about what will humanity become? Will technology make humans better? What happens when society becomes divided? What could happen to Earth millions of years from now? 3. His journey into the future. The time traveler travels thousands and eventually millions of years into the future. At first, he arrives in a seemingly beautiful future. Humanity appears peaceful, and he meets small, gentle people called the Eloi. The Eloi live above ground and seem to have an easy life. They don't appear to work very hard and spend much of their time enjoying themselves. The time traveler initially thinks humanity has finally achieved a peaceful and comfortable civilization, but then he discovers something frightening. 4. The Eloi and the Morlocks. The future humans have divided into two different groups. The Eloi. The Eloi live above ground. They are small, physically weak, childlike, peaceful, dependent on their environment. They represent one possible result of a society that becomes extremely comfortable and stops struggling to survive. The Morlocks. The Morlocks live underground. They are very different from the Eloi. They are stronger, more frightening, adapted to darkness, connected with machinery, living underground. The time traveler eventually discovers that the relationship between the two groups is much darker than he first thought. The Morlocks are connected to the Eloi's existence in a disturbing way. 5. The deeper meaning. This is where the time machine becomes much more than an adventure story. Wells was thinking about social class and inequality. The Eloi can be understood as representing a wealthy, privileged class that has lived comfortably for generations. The Morlocks can be understood as representing workers who live underground and maintain the machinery that supports society. Over an enormous amount of time, Wells imagines these social differences becoming so extreme that the two groups eventually become almost different species. So the novel asks, what happens when the gap between rich and poor becomes enormous? Number 6. The time traveler discovers the truth. The time traveler realizes that the beautiful future he first saw isn't actually a perfect civilization. There is fear beneath the peaceful appearance. He also discovers that his time machine has disappeared. This creates a major problem. He cannot return to his own time. He has to explore the future and find out what happened to his machine. This turns the story into an adventure and survival journey. 7. He travels even farther. Eventually, the time traveler goes much farther into the future. Human civilization has almost completely disappeared. Earth itself is becoming increasingly strange and lifeless. The sun is changing, the environment is becoming hostile, and life is disappearing. This is one of the most powerful ideas in the book. Humanity is not necessarily the final stage of evolution. One day, humans could disappear just like countless other species have disappeared throughout Earth's history. The distant future. The time traveler eventually reaches an incredibly distant future where Earth is almost dead. There are few signs of human civilization. The world is becoming cold, dark, and lifeless. This gives the story a huge perspective. Human history may seem enormous to us, but on the scale of the universe, it is only a tiny part of time. What does the book really teach? 1. Technology doesn't automatically make humanity better. A machine can become more advanced, but that doesn't guarantee that humans will become wiser or kinder. 2. Social inequality can have serious consequences. Wells imagines class divisions becoming extreme that society itself changes. 3. Civilization is temporary. Cities, governments, and technology may seem permanent, but they aren't. 4. Humanity is part of evolution. humans aren't necessarily the final form of life. 5. The future is unpredictable. Even if we understand the present, we cannot know exactly what humanity will become. The biggest idea, the most interesting thing about the time machine isn't actually the machine, it's time itself. Wells asks us to imagine, if you could travel 1,000 years into the future, would you still recognize humanity? Then he takes the idea much further. What if you traveled 1 million years? 10 million years? What would Earth look like? That is why the time machine became such an important science fiction story. In very simple words, the time machine is the story of a scientist who invents a machine that travels through time. He goes into the distant future and discovers that humanity has changed dramatically. He meets the Eloi and Morlocks, discovers a dark connection between them, and eventually travels so far into the future that Earth itself is approaching the end of its life. The story is really about humanity, evolution, inequality, technology, survival, and the enormous passage of time.